Hello and welcome to our tutorial. So in this tutorial we're going to build on what we had. So we had a character that could fall under gravity, so it had a rigid body, and we could walk left, it played an animation, and it walks right and it flips and plays an animation. So that's kind of where we had gotten to. So in this part of the tutorial we're going to add to the script and we're going to add in a jump, and then we're also going to add in a platform, an animated platform. So we'll have a look at the character jumping on or jumping off the platform. So let's have a look at that. So yeah, we'll start with our script. So actually I'll just show it to you first of all. So I'm going to press play, and the character is going to, I can jump by pressing spacebar. Now he's still playing the idle cycle when I jump, so I might amend that as we go on. So maybe he plays one frame of the jump or the walk animation, so it looks like he's jumping. So when I look at how that works, how do we get that jump to work? And the script will look a little bit sort of intimidating initially, but it's actually not terribly. So in the last sort of incarnation of this script, we had only two variables. So we had to trigger the animations by accessing this thing here called the animator, and then we had to set the speed that the character walked at. So the next variable here is the speed that the character is jumping at, so it's got a speed of 20 at the moment. Then we have to tell it to apply that speed, and in this case down here it's a force that we're adding. We're going to add the force, but what do we add the force to? We can't add it to the sprite, because sprite is just a sprite. So we need to add it to the rigid body, which is the component on the sprite that actually gives it physics. And then we have this last one here, which is a bool, which is similar to the bool that we used, like sort of true or false or on or off, when we were triggering the animation, walking or not walking. And we've created this one here called is grounded, and that's just to check, are we on the ground? If we don't use that and then we press play, so down here you can see is grounded in the bottom right here. So when I'm touching the ground here, I'm grounded, and when I jump, I'm no longer grounded. So grounded, no longer grounded. And that's very important because I've set a condition that this must be turned on before I can jump. So that means that while I'm in the air, if I press jump again, press spacebar again, I don't get an additional jump. If I were to get an additional jump, then I'd be able to fly, basically. So I want to stop the character from doing that. Now there's a couple of ways to do that. We'll look at a more advanced way in another tutorial where you'll use kind of ray casting. But for now we're just going to say if I'm touching the ground, I can jump. But then once I'm not touching the ground, I can no longer get the same jump. So we've added this bit in here at the start, which is a void start. So when the script is loaded into the game engine, I'm just loading in the rigid body. So it says, so I've called my rigid body body 2D. I could have called it anything I wanted. Biffy, I could call it anything I want, so long as I refer to it down here by the same name. So I've said body 2D equals transform get component rigid body. So it's going to look for the rigid body on the object that this script is on. So if we click on our player, this script is on this sprite, and the rigid body 2D is also on this sprite. So it's going to look for this. And the reason that we load it in there at the beginning is so that we can, at any point in the game, go use the rigid body and not have to go find it first and then jump every time we press spacebar. So it's basically, when we load it in here at the start, it just makes it more efficient in terms of we can access it at any time. We'd already put this in and this one, so they haven't changed. This one also was here last time, that hasn't changed. And then the only thing we have here is this extra bit here. Now what does that say? It says if input.getKey down, key code space. So if I press the space bar, now do note that this says get key and this says get key down. So get key is I can press the key and hold it and it'll still work, so I can just keep walking. this says get key down, so it only works once. So I press the space bar, and it's basically once it's depressed, the action takes place. So I can keep holding the space bar down, but that won't add any additional force, or it won't keep the action going. So if I wanted to get another jump, I'd have to lift my hand off the space bar and press it down again. And you can equally say get key up, and so you've got quite a bit of control. So get key down, key code space bar, or space, and so this is how you add in a second condition into an if. So if I press the space bar and is grounded is true, then find the rigid body and add a force. Now what force do I want to add? I'll transform that up, multiplied by jump speed, multiplied by this guy here. Now the reason I add that one in is I want all the force added at once. I don't want any sort of ramping into it or acceleration, or I don't want the force added over time. So it's basically an impulse. So it's just it's like an explosion. So it's just going to give a burst of force. You can get the force to be added in different ways, like in a continuous force, like a constant push. So in this instance here, all the force is added in one instant, and that instance is when I press the spacebar. Now let's have a look at this is grounded condition here. So down here, these are the only other two extra bits of code, and they're quite straightforward. It might look straightforward, but so this says on collision enter. So when I collide with something, this refers to me, and this refers to the object I'm colliding with. And then down here I'm saying, because obviously a collision is between two things. So if the collision, the object I hit, so if that collision.gameObject.tag equals ground, is grounded equals true. So if I collide with something that has the tag ground, then I can jump, because is grounded is true. And then it says on collision exit. So when I'm no longer in collision with an object with the tag ground, is grounded is false. So when is grounded is false, this statement here cannot be true. So I can press the spacebar as much as I want, but this will be false, so it won't add the force. Only when it's true, so when I've connected with the ground, can I jump. So if we add in a platform, which we're going to do, we have then the choice of we can tag the platform with the tag ground, and in which case then we can jump off the platform. But if we choose not to, as you know, you're here to design games, then the player can walk off the platform but won't be able to jump off it, and that's your decision as a designer. So let's have a little look in Unity at how we tag something. So this is my ground here, and it's got the tag ground. So if I, let's create another random object here. So I'll add in 2D sprite, so it doesn't actually have an image in it, but it doesn't matter, it's an object. All objects arrive untagged. So I can add in any tag I want, and then I can refer to those tags in the script if I wanted. I can put them in inverted commas as long as I spell them correctly. Or I can make a new one, which is what I did here. So ground is not a tag that comes pre-made in Unity. All the rest of them are. So I can go add tag, and then here you can see it says tag 0 is ground. So I can hit plus, put in a new tag. So we'll call this Biffy, and hit save. So now I have that tag here, new sprite, and I can tag it Biffy. So you can make your own tags, and you can have as many of them as you like. So you could have different conditions. If I was on if you wanted the player, if they were walking on a different surface, to move at a different velocity, you could do all that with tags if you wanted. Now normally people don't do it that way. Normally we do it with ray casting, so all the controls go on the character, and that way you only have to set them up once, and then as that sprite then moves from level to level, it doesn't matter what they're walking on, the controls are on the character. Whereas if you put the control, like the tag is on the environment, then you have to go through every level and tag every object. But it depends what you're trying to achieve as to which method you might take. So let's delete that because I don't need it. So if I click on my player here and we look here, so these are the public variables. So I've got public, 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 public. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. And I did not meant to press that button, but I did. And that'll load up now and slow me down. And yeah, we got rid of that. So here are my 5 variables. So I've got my speed, my jump speed. I have to declare the animator controller, and I have to declare what my rigid body is. So to do that, I can click on these little circles here. If I had more than one player, like maybe a couple of non-player characters, I'd have to select which one I wanted this script to control. The same with the animator controller. And down here, you know, I can actually turn that on and off here, but that will be toggled on and off during gameplay. So again, if I press play and I land, I press the space bar, you can see is grounded, turns on and off as I exit contact with the ground and then enter contact with the ground. Okay, so let's have a look at this platform, making a platform. So we'll right click and we'll go to the object sprite like we did when we made the ground, and we'll click on this little circle over here where it says no, we have no sprite here, and we could select any of these, but what did we use before? I think we used that one here, background. And did we use that? Hang on. Well, let's check. Let's look at where the ground is, and it's got input field background. So let's change it to that. That one there. There we go. Now, so it's got a weird position here, this new sprite. It's got a Z value of -486, whereas the ground has, well, it shouldn't have any Z value. Okay, and then it's got an X and Y position. So let's go here and give this a value of 0. So now we can see it, it's in the right plane. We won't worry about these two values, that's just its horizontal and vertical position. Okay, so let's move this over here, and then what's going to change the scale of it, so we'll make it a bit wider and make it a little bit bigger, not too much. Now, so that's our sprite. Now obviously we can, you know, make this beautiful and put in all sorts of glorious sci-fi scenery or whatever theme we pick, but for now that'll just be our placeholder. So let's see how we would get that to animate, and also how to have collision. So first of all, let's just work on collision. So I'm going to go add component, physics 2D, box collider, and there's my box collider there. So let's press play and see if it's possible to jump onto this platform. So I can get that high, and there we go. So now I'm on my platform, but I cannot jump off the platform. So I can flail on the spacebar. All I can do is walk off it. And oh, that's an interesting wobble we've had. So and we'll talk about how we fix that in a moment. So let's give this here a tag of ground. So now what we should be able to do is walk over here and jump, and we're on the platform, and now I should be able to jump again, and off I go. Now let's have a look at how we might fix that wobble. So we'll close our box collider here. So in my rigid bodies here, I've got this constraints here, and I've got I can freeze position and freeze rotation. So I'm going to press freeze rotation on Z, and we'll press play and see if we can test to see if that works. So we'll walk to here and we'll jump, and there we are. Now if I select the player here, maybe there's this box collider. Now if I click back here, I'm going to walk forward a little bit. So you can see, even though this collider has gone way off the edge, so I'm now floating in space, I have not fallen. And that's because this is turned on. Now if I turn that off, I'll tip over the edge. And now I've got a problem. So we have to ask ourselves how we deal with that problem. We won't solve it in this particular tutorial, but it's an interesting conundrum. So we'll leave it turned on for now. but we do need to figure out a way of being able to get to the edge of something, but not floating in space. And again, like I said, there's different methods of dealing with that problem. So I'm going to take my new sprite here. We'll call this, we'll rename it here, and we'll call it Platform 1. Platform 1. And I'm just going to lower it down a little bit. So now I'm going to animate it. And so what we made before was an animator controller. And how we did that was we went to our window, animation, and animation. So I'm going to do the same thing again. So here's my object, and I'm going to go create. And when I do that, it's going to create another animator controller. We'll go put this in here, and we'll call it so Platform 1. So if you look up here, the animation is called Platform 1, and we have a new animator controller. So I want to animate this, its position. So I'm going to go add property, and it's going to say what property do you want to add, or what do you want to animate, and it's transform position. Now I could easily pick rotation and scale, but the thing I'm interested in now is its position. You can see here I can animate the renderer and also the box collider. This box collider will become more interesting later on if we're going to make sort of like kind of sprite based kind of melee or kind of Street Fighter-esque kind of games. We can animate the box collider, but for now we're just going to animate this sprite. So we're going to say position. So now we have a keyframe on the position. So the next question is well, how long do we want the animation to be? And so I'm just going to zoom out here, and let's say 3 seconds. So at 3 seconds, I'm going to move this up here. Okay, and I'm going to add a new keyframe in. So this is add event, add keyframe, and then filter. So I'm going to add keyframe. So I'm going to delete that one. I don't need it. Now, if I scrub back here, it had remembered my original position, and then it goes up. Now, I don't know if you can see it straight away here. I'm going to press play. There's sort of an acceleration to it, so we can actually get in and we can edit the curve of that animation, but we'll leave that for another tutorial. I'm going to take this one here, and I'm going to press Control C. And I want to create a loop, so it's going up and down, not just going up and then magically teleporting back down again. But to do that, I need to go out to, I'm just using the middle mouse wheel to scroll out here. I'm going to go to 6 seconds. And there we go. And Control V. And now when I press play, so I've got 3 seconds up and 3 seconds down. So I've got sort of an animated platform. Now if we look at that in the animator controller, there is only one animation. So there's only, here we had two, we had the idle and the walk. And we have to set up the relationships between both. So if you wanted the platform to have multiple animations, then we would address it the same way. We'd have to write a script and get it to control. But with this we don't. And if you remember, this is play on start, basically. This orange color here. If I didn't want it to start when the game started, I would then have to put a script on it saying do not play this animation until maybe I've collided with something. So we'd end up having to add in a parameter up here, and we'd say when platform 1 is active equals true, then play the animation, etc. So we can use the same sort of controls that we used and same logic we used for the character. So let's press play in our game and see what we get, and we'll get some kind of unusual behavior here. So as I jump onto this, it's going to push up and then it's going to drop down from underneath me. And so in our next tutorial we're going to look at that and we're going to address how we fix that. And one of the things that we'll do to make that better is we will make the character, when it's touching the platform, it'll be the child of the platform. And then we won't have this kind of hopping and jumping and skipping. Otherwise, we end up with we can get really weird anomalies in our game. So okay, so I think we're 20 minutes in, so we're going to leave that there for now. So just to show you the script again, so these are our 5 variables. We've loaded in the rigid body at the beginning. We've kept our left and right arrow movement and the manipulation of the sprite. We've added in a, if I press the spacebar and if my collision is true, then add a force to the rigid body going up with this velocity and make it happen immediately. And then we've said, obviously, we've left this here if I'm not pressing any key, play the idle cycle. And then these 2 parts here are about collision. So if I'm in collision, if I have a collision with something with the tag ground, make it true. If I exit that collision, make it false. So hopefully that makes sense to you, and hopefully you can complete that in class.